Hi, my name is William James Wheeler. I'm a retired Air Force Senior Master Sergeant. I served in the Air Force for 21 years, 21 days, and I'm a Vietnam veteran.
When did you first have the desire to be in the Air Force?
From a very young age, I desired to be in the Air Force because I had an Uncle Bill who served in the Air Force during World War II and after that, and I admired him a great deal, and it's something that I always wanted to do. As a matter of fact, in my Air Force or in my yearbook of graduating from high school, the only thing I had written under my picture is the only thing for sure about Bill is he's going to serve in the Air Force.
And what's your most memorable moment from in the Air Force?
From the Air Force, it would have to be my most memorable moment. Would have to have been the when I was stationed at Ching Chong Kang Air Base in Taiwan, but my job there was to do support trips into Vietnam, and I was 23 years old when I started that, and 25 years old when I came home, and I made monthly trips into Vietnam, and I felt like even though it was an unpopular war, it to me it was I didn't pay attention to politics at that time. It just was. I felt I was doing my part. There was a war going on, and I wanted to do my part.
When you were in Vietnam, what were the things you saw and the things that what did you do when you were in Vietnam? Because you were on the C-130, right?
Yes, I was a courier. I had courier duty, and I out of we had four of our substations for our squadron, the 50th Tactical Airlift Squadron, which was one of the most prominent uh, combat cargo planes in the Air Force at the time. Now it'd be nothing compared to the big ones like the C-17 or something, but it was what I hopped on all the time, and I would just fly to four different bases to Tui Wa, to Da Nang, Cam Ranh Bay, and Tan Son Nhut. And my job was just to. It wasn't like today when someone wanted to get something from point A to point B, we get on a computer. There were no computers, if you can imagine that as a young man. No computers to do anything, and so anything we wanted to get around to different places, we had to do it by courier. So what I would do is I'd hop on different airplanes and carry classified documents or documents that might need signed by some of our officers at these substations we had in Vietnam. And I'd be the guy that would hop on the airplane and take them in, get their signatures, bring them back. Or one of the things I did was during the Christmas season, these guys, with all their mail and packages for Christmas, would come into our home station at Ching Chong Kang Air Base in Taiwan, and I'd gather them all up and almost be like a Santa Claus taking them in and delivering them to our guys at these four different stations in Vietnam. Uh, that was enjoyable. I When we went to these places, I I want to make it clear that I was a pencil pusher. I wasn't like a hero crawling around in the jungle with an M16. I had to know how to use one, but I hope never be called upon to be crawling around that jungle. But you had to know what you were doing to go there. But at the same time, when I would go there, it would just be about pushing paper. It was like an adventure for me. But one of the times I went there, to give you an idea, I went to Tan Son Nhut Air Base in Saigon, the town that's now known in Ho Chi Minh City, because after we lost the war, they changed the name of the city. But I would go to that base, and at that time we had over 1 million people in Vietnam, and there was no place for me to stay. So they asked me if I'd mind staying downtown Saigon, which was the name of the city, and so I said, yeah, no sweat. They take me downtown Saigon. I'd get a room there in this civilian hotel. And the next thing you know, I wasn't in there for getting settled down in my room, and I wasn't there for more than 10 minutes. The next thing I hear this explosion. It was during what's called the Tet Offensive. You may have studied that in school, I don't know. But the Tet Offensive was a very rugged time in Vietnam. And I hear this explosion. I run downstairs, and a guy had gone down and threw an explosive device into the lobby and blew it up. So, not being the hero that I'm not, I immediately contacted the base and said, "Send a jeep to get me, because I'm sure not staying here." And I went back to the base and said, "I don't care where I have to sleep. I'll sleep on the floor in the hangar. I don't really care, but I'm not staying down in that city." So that was a memorable time. So that was exciting but scary at the same time. And probably the worst memory that I would have would have been as I would catch different C-130s, not the same aircraft each time, as crawling on an airplane and maybe seeing 20 body bags of my comrades that weren't going home the good way. And that made me sad, more sad than scared, because you don't think it's going to happen to you. So that was bad. And then the other times were like landing at Da Nang, where they'd be shooting in rockets and stuff. But you know, I went there at 23. I come home at 25, and the toughest thing for me was missing my family. I wrote my wife every single day, even when I was in Vietnam, and sometimes I just write a short note, and just each place I would go, I'd add to the note. And then when I would get back to my home base, then I would drop it in the mail to her, so that she would know that I was okay. But my last assignment, and the reason I say last one is you get to choose your last assignment. And I was what we called a short timer, because I was within 30 days of going home, and went into Vietnam. And on the way in, landing in Vietnam, our airplane took 47 small arms hits. Now, small arms hits is never going to bring down a C-130 unless it happened to be at that perfect place. But that was enough that when I got off that airplane and we counted the number of times we got hit, I decided that I think I just made my last trip into Vietnam. Because when you get in with 30 days, they let you make the choice, because there were more people killed when they got within their 30 days than early on in their experience. So I guess I have to tell you that I loved that assignment. I loved my comrades, and everywhere I went at that time, I would run into other people that I served with at other bases, because pretty much nobody that was serving at that time got out of serving in Vietnam. But then finally, I guess the saddest part was when I finally took them home. I was wearing my Class A blues, all decked out with all my ribbons on and everything, like what I have up here on the wall. And as I said in the beginning, I was proud to serve. But then when we got out of there to the first home base in Okinawa, they said, "You need to take that uniform off." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're not going to be received well if they see you as a military guy coming home from this unpopular war." That, my young man, made me very sad, that I couldn't be proud of my service and I had to hide that I was a military guy. So I took it off and put civilian clothes on, and then went on home and got ready for my next assignment.
So when you rode on the C-130s,
Mm-hmm.
what was like your main job on the plane? Was it, because it was a transport plane, so you were flying
Yes.
in and out of Vietnam.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
So like, what was the main thing that you were doing?
I was what they called auxiliary crew member. So I had a set of orders signed by the commander that authorized me to ride on any Vietnam in and around Vietnam, and my job was strictly, I had nothing to do with flying the aircraft, although my roommate was a flight engineer in the C-130. So this kind of a sidebar, but he was up in the front of the airplane, and if it was an empty seat up there, he always got it for me instead of having to be back in the cargo. And then but he's the one who looked at all the maintenance things, And sometimes he would wake me up in the middle of the night and say, because it was a different time in the Air Force, and he'd say, Bill, do you want to go in country? In country was Vietnam. And so a lot of times I would just get a set of orders out with the commander's stamp on it, which was legal back then, and I would go into Vietnam with him. So my job in the aircraft was nothing but riding it in. And but I knew every C-130 pilot, every crew member, and I don't know. It's hard to explain. If you ever played a video game, it was like our video game. It's terrible to say, but C-130 could take off on a dime and land on one and give you change. That's what I used to say. It was crazy. It was I loved all those guys that flew those, and they got me in and out safely all the time. So my job was just basically to make the job easier for the other guys that served. I had to be qualified, weapons qualified, and all these things. But every day I got to go in and out of there and come back without having to use a weapon or do anything heroic was a good day for me.
When you weren't being like deployed in a way and you were just on base, like what was your main objective when you were on base?
It was different bases. Where I was at Warner Robins, Georgia, when I got an assignment out of there, I was working in headquarters Rama, which was it was considered the supply house of the whole Air Force, and we figured out what weapons, what supplies went to what base overseas, wherever. But then I was only there for 9 months, and then they assigned me out of there, and that's when I got assigned to the CCK, which we milked that one to death, so I won't hit that anymore. But then when I was coming back from there, I got assigned another special assignment at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, and my assignment there was training F-111 pilots, F-111 academics. But that job didn't last long because they were constantly, I don't know if you ever heard of that airplane, but it was the first full back wing span airplane, and it was a new airplane, and they were constantly crashing. So every time one crashed, then we got grounded, and we really didn't have anything to do. So then I was only there for 9 months and shipped out to another place, and from there I went to testing me on my brain here. That's when I went to Wisconsin, and then there I went and was training Air Force ROTC cadets and recruiting them and getting them commissioned. And strangely enough, while I was there, the university was looking for a new, because I was stationed actually on the University of Wisconsin, not on a military base, and they wanted to know that if I would be willing to train their Air Force, or their Drum and Bugle Corps, and I said sure. They gave me an extra job, and so I agreed to do that. But while I was doing that, and not too bad, we're doing this for to show you a picture where after I had taken that job over, they were all civilians. I recruited half of them to go in the Air Force, and the other half I put them in Air Force uniforms, white helmets with American flags on the side, and all of a sudden they became the Air Force ROTC Drum and Bugle Corps, and I was there for 3 years and won 3 national championships with the Drum and Bugle Corps. And I knew nothing about music, but I knew about marching, and I knew about timeliness, and I taught them to be the sharpest doggone cadets you ever want to see. So that was that one. And then I had to when I had to leave there. Oh, forgive me for the pause, but I've got, forgive me, those of your people listening, but thanks to Vietnam, I've got a few memory problems, but I don't blame Vietnam for that. But then I went to Air Force recruiting in my home state of Pennsylvania, and ended up being in charge of 125 different recruiting stations, and all I did was travel around and made sure that the troops were doing a good job of recruiting people, and Air Force recruiting was the one and only job in the Air Force that you could be fired from, because if you weren't getting the numbers, you weren't staying in the job. And so I enjoyed that immensely. And the thing I didn't like about that job is if a recruiter was being fired, well, no, the commanders, they didn't go and fire him. They send me out to fire him. So I didn't, that was a very awful thing. And for a long time, I had a lot of fellow Air Force members that hated me, but I never went out and said, hey, don't hate me. The old man sent me here to do this. You know, I just took it on my shoulders to do it. Then I decided that I wanted to go back to the real, what we call the real Air Force, because all my assignments were special. And so I put in papers to go back to the real Air Force, and this will make you laugh, because this is another wisdom of the Air Force. I put in for Minot Air Force Base when I was leaving recruiting, Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. The saying was, why not Minot? Because everybody hated to go to Minot, North Dakota. Why would I want to go there? Because my bride, Darlene, was from North Dakota, and if they sent me to Minot, I'd only be 100 miles from her parents' place, and she never got to be home around her parents. So I thought that would be really cool. So let's just make my last, and it was going to be a 5-year assignment, and so I could stay there, and I would have been the NCO in charge of base administration, basically the head enlisted guy for the whole base, and I would work for the base commander. Well, lo and behold, I got my orders, I opened them up, and there's another little base on the other side of our great country of ours called Boring Loring. Nobody wanted to go to Boring Loring, but guess where they sent me? Boring Loring. And so I was supposed to be there 5 years, and I couldn't face that. Because I got there and I didn't really have a job. Most people would love that. Collect your pay, go to the gym, and all you did was sit at your desk and troubleshoot and stuff. And I could have done that maybe somewhere else, but not Boring Loring. So I spent 9 months there, asked to be relieved of duty, and went home.
What would you say to people in the Air Force now? Like, if you could say anything to them, what would you say? Or like any advice that you would give them?
I'd tell them that whether you stayed in for 4 years or over 20 like I did, be proud of what you're doing, do the best job you can do, because there's always something to learn that can help you in your civilian life when you get out. And again, be proud of yourself. I live close to a base here, and every time I go on base, and they have to see my ID card to get on base, and I show it, and I tell those young men and women that are guarding that gate, first of all, I thank them for their service. I thank them for keeping us safe, and I tell them, be proud of your service. That no matter what you do in it, be proud of it. There's not a non-important job, and if you don't like the job you're in, find a different one. But don't ever be a negative server. Be a positive server. So I guess that's what I would say to them, is just be proud of your service. And I was very much so, and I still am today. It's kind of funny. I've been retired now. I don't know if I've ever even told you this personally, but well, you know when I retired, because you got it right here in this incredible car you made for me, Nicholas, and certified it, one of a kind. And it shows on here my date of going in the Air Force in 1961 and my date of retiring from the Air Force in 1982. But I was proud of it then, I'm proud of it now. And I don't know if this belongs in your video here, but I'm doggone proud of you. Forgive me, people, but I'm got a lot of disabilities now, unfortunately. I'm suffering from Agent Orange that was sprayed all around the bases there, but that doesn't change a thing. You knew how proud I was. The C-130s I flew on around here. You're a very talented young man, but anyway, people, whoever's watching this, I'm proud of this young man. Look what he did for his Uncle Bill. But anyway, I thank you for that. And I forgot what the question was already, but that's okay. I wanted to get that in there.
Were there any other wars that you were like a part of other than Vietnam when you were in the Air Force?
No, it's the only one that that was an active war, but we always had something going on somewhere, unfortunately. But that was the only one that was a declared war. That started the same year I entered the Air Force, and it didn't end until 1975 when I was out of the Air Force. After that, there were other wars, or most of the times they would call them operations, and didn't go in full-fledged wars, thank God. But I think the young men and women in the Air Force today, I went and served in Taiwan 13 months. I went in and out of Vietnam many times while I was there. The poor guys that serve today, they're constantly being deployed to all these hot spots around the world. And for them, I pray for every single day. And I only served in Vietnam once. As a matter of fact, I was selected to become an officer in the Air Force because of my successful duties. And I was supposed to go to school right here in Florida, where we're at right now, people. And I was supposed to go to school here and get my commission. So I was in Wisconsin at the time serving, and I called a friend of mine that was in assignments in Texas, and I asked him what my sheet looked like, my assignment sheet. And I said, I'm supposed to go to school and get commission. And he said, you will not get a chance to do that right now, because I'm looking at a set of orders for you right now that's going to send you back to Vietnam, because I didn't have to listen to this, forgive me people, listen to this foolishness of the military. I did not get credit for being in Vietnam because my assignment was CCK Taiwan, forgive me, I get animated, and I went into Vietnam on temporary duties in and out. So it was not considered a permanent assignment. And so now they were ready to give me my permanent assignment. So I turned down my commission and put in for another special assignment and just remained an enlisted man, which I retired as a Senior Master Sergeant E8 after 21 years, 21 days. Anything else?
No, we thank you for your service. And
I appreciate that, young man. I appreciate that. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell my story. And I really, 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 if anybody's ever looking, oh my God, this guy does a wonderful job. And I'm not saying that because he's my nephew, my great nephew, but he is a great nephew. Thank you very much.
No problem.